Good morning and welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. My name's Diane Alcorn and I am the Membership and Engagement Coordinator here. If this is your first time visiting with us, welcome. We're glad you took the time to join us here. If you'd like more information about our church and our worship community, please feel free and send me an email. In the meantime, again, welcome. We're so glad you took the time to join us.
Welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church, a spiritual community whose hope is audacious and whose vision is for a more equitable and just life for us all. I'm Vicki Warden, Worship Associate of this amazing community. Joining me this lovely July 4 weekend are David Blazer, Music Director, and Christine Salante, our Tech Guru. And I extend a special welcome to our guest speaker this morning, Michael Dowd, who will be joining us via technology from his home in Colorado. Michael is a best-selling eco-theologian, TEDx speaker, and pro-future advocate. His work has been featured in a number of publications and on television. He and his wife, Connie Barlow, have addressed nearly 3,000 groups throughout North America in the last 2 decades, including nearly 500 Unitarian Universalist churches. In 2016, Michael and Connie were honored as the UU Religious Humanists of the Year at our General Assembly in Columbus, Ohio. A warm West Shore welcome to you, Michael. Together, we are pleased to invite you into this space, which is connecting people in Cleveland and beyond to our welcoming community. Often the world is not quite so welcoming. Often the values of the world are neither loving nor just. So, may this worship hour be one where our souls are fed by wisdom and a passion that reminds us that life doesn't have to be like that there exists a larger love in every human heart, urging us on to be what is better. Let this larger love move in our midst today, and may we be changed by it. A special welcome to you if you are a newcomer to our community, gay or straight, cisgender, transgender, whatever your race or ethnicity, you are welcome here. Once again, welcome to all on this new day. Each week we light our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. It is a beautiful reminder that no matter how many jarring events might happen over the course of the week, the gathered community that is West Shore is a source of stability and meaning that we can depend on. Please say with me our words, originally inspired by Maya Angelou. This is our chalice. In many separate rooms, we light one flame, the flame of passion, flame of compassion, flame of humor, flame of style. We do not merely accept surviving. Let our mission be to thrive. Together, in spirit, we are one. Let us witness to the unity of our spirit by saying together our unison affirmation words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio su ley. Este es nuestro magnífico convenio, vivir juntas en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. So may it be. Now, I just thought before we get going further, take a couple minutes to bring you up to date on the organ repair. All of the organ pipes have been removed from the loft, and after settling for several weeks in the pews, are now all at the shop for repair. For those of us fortunate enough to see inside the sanctuary, we joked that it looked more like a mini missile site with all of the tubes on the rows. But the loft looks so empty. But the work continues, and it appears all is going well, and we should be on target for the fall. Please take time to read through the Friday weekly e-newsletter for all kinds of information about people and events important to us all. And now we take our time of greeting. We greet each other in the midst of our joys and struggles. Those joys and struggles are both personal and sometimes public. Let us each now say the names of people whom we are holding in our personal thoughts and prayers this morning. People in the West Shore community, people beyond, wherever or whoever they happen to be. Say these names out loud into the space of your room, as if just the act of saying the name is like a prayer, which it is. This has been our greeting time, when we are called out of the ordinary world of our daily life and into a special time of renewal and vitality and remembering who we really are. And now, please join David in hymn number 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation. And now for a reflection, very personal one, about July 4th. July 4th is always, it's a high point in the summer for me. Not that I do anything special, but it's because it's early in the season and I know that lots of warm, sunny days lie ahead. When I was a kid, it meant a parade, but not one sponsored by anyone, just us, maybe about 10 kids on our block. We would spend the morning decorating our bicycles with crepe paper, weaving red and blue strips in and out of the bicycle spokes, and winding those strips around the handlebars. But the piece de resistance was attaching a playing card to the back strut by means of a clothespin. Then when you rode your bike, it made this glorious clatter as each of the spokes hit the card. It didn't take a whole lot to amuse us, obviously. Now the big attraction for this holiday is fireworks. When my children were little, we used to go to the beach in Fairport Harbor and lie on the sand and look up at the glorious fireworks. After the children grew up, I found that I could see fireworks from the yard of a friend. That was a lot easier than getting down in the sand. But you know what? Now I've got it down pat. You will find me watching fireworks on PBS, on the couch, probably with a glass of wine, because life is good. So what is behind all this stuff? Parades, fireworks. The real cause of our celebration is our independence from British forces, which seemed like a pretty noble event, even looking at it 50 years ago when we celebrated. I'm not so sure it is quite as noble as it was then. Nothing against or necessarily for the British, but one might argue that our sense of independence has taken on a life of its own. Americans have always, and with very full throats, extolled their independence. No one can tell me what to do. I have my rights. I am my own person. We pride ourselves in bootstraps that only we can pull up. But maybe that isn't really quite what we need today. Maybe what we need is a little Interdependence Day celebration. What if we, as a country, had foregone the privilege of independence in March 2020, when the pandemic broke open? What if we had all followed guidelines immediately that overrode our independence, our personal freedoms? Think it might have had a pretty significant effect on over 600,000 deaths in our country? I think so. But we are so invested in allowing everyone to display their independence that we lose the ability to think logically about what is good for everyone in the long run. You know, that's really not very smart. So what I'm proposing is that we reimagine July 4 as Interdependence Day. This is the day when we acknowledge that our lives are all interdependent on others. No, I can't do it alone. Matter of fact, I don't really want to. I am a part of society, an integral part, yeah, but a part along with all the others. And I think I like that idea. You know what? I think I'm going to go get some crepe paper, and I'm going to decorate my bike for a parade. Happy Interdependence Day. The offering today is one way we have of providing for all of the people and programs that we enjoy all year long. Our pledge drive gives us the basis upon which we can budget, but we also must depend upon the generosity of our members and friends throughout the year to contribute to the church, to help keep our priorities. You, members and friends, have been very generous so far. Please continue to hold West Shore in your financial thoughts. For those of you who are tech savvy, the text number for a weekly contribution is 73256. And now, David will commemorate this special July 4 holiday.
Good morning. I have a few readings to prepare our hearts for a meditation as we prepare for my presentation on the topic of true sustainability, cultivating a repentant, pro-future heart and mind. Vine Deloria was a very well-known Indigenous elder and theologian, activist, author. And he says, somewhere in the planetary history, religious expression changed from participation in the sound, color, and rhythm of nature to the abstractions of man outside this context, pleading for temporary respite in hoping in the next life to return to the garden. Daniel Wildcat is an Indigenous elder who says what typifies that shift, that we actually live among relatives, not resources. And my great mentor, Thomas Berry, one of the most significant ecological and evolutionary thinkers of the 20th century, said along similar lines, the universe is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. The environment, after all, is not our surroundings. It is our source, sustenance, and end. So on this holiday weekend that we celebrate our profound interdependence, not just independence, but our interdependence with the body of life, I invite you to, either with your eyes open or your eyes closed, to just be present to your breath. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. And just be present to the gift that each breath provides, and that we are sustained by our communion with the trees and the plankton that make the oxygen, and our profound interrelatedness with all things. And then I'll be silent. And I invite you on this holiday weekend to ponder how you might become more intimate with the body of life upon which we all depend. True sustainability, cultivating a repentant, pro-future heart and mind. I'd like to share some slides first, and then I'll just take it off slides and share from my heart for the rest of the sermon. I suggest that sustainable means faithful to time and nature. Unsustainable means unfaithful to time and nature, and that everything else is but a footnote or a distraction. The challenge is that we don't relate to things in a faithful or unfaithful way. We relate to beings, persons, in a faithful or unfaithful way. Loyal Rue is one of the most famous philosophers of religion alive today, at least in the English language. He wrote a number of books. One of them is Religion is Not About God. And what he means is that religion is about our relationship to reality. And yes, reality has been personified as various gods and goddesses. But if religion is doing its job, it's to help us relate in a healthy way to reality, inescapable reality. He says the most profound insight in the history of humankind is that we should seek to live in accord with reality. Indeed, living in harmony with reality may be accepted as a formal definition of wisdom. If we live at odds with reality, foolishly, we will be doomed. But if we live in proper relationship with reality, wisely, we may be saved. What do we refer to? What name do we give to that which brought everything into being, that which nourishes and sustains everything, and that which receives everything at its end? This is inescapably real, but what do we call it? Well, what we call reality, what we call nature, what we call the biosphere, indigenous, that is faithful or sustainable or pro-future cultures, experienced personally and related to and honored in an I-thou way. You could say life's fundamental laws relate to the larger body of life as divine or perish. That's one of the things that all indigenous cultures, truly pro-future cultures, they related to the body of life, not merely as resources or a place for our waste, but as a community of being in different mythological ways. What we know scientifically, there's no debate about this, is that reality is nested. Subatomic particles within atoms, within molecules, within cells, and so on and so forth. And we are in the middle. We're made up of smaller, creative, intelligent realities like our microbiome that we don't exist without. And we are dependent upon larger, creative, intelligent realities like the atmosphere, like the body of life, the biosphere, like the plants and trees and the plankton. And so what I mean by primary reality is everything inside us and everything outside us that we don't exist without. We're ultimately dependent upon that. Martin Buber, the famous Jewish theologian, said in his book, I and Thou, that we will relate to this reality in an I-thou way, or we will go extinct. It's the opposite of what we've now been experiencing. The last several hundred years, we've been relating to primary reality as a clock, a clockwork mechanistic cosmos, and that is radically unsustainable. So all indigenous cultures, pro-future cultures, genuinely sustainable cultures had an eco-theo worldview. That is, the ecos was related to as divine, as alive, and the theos, the world of the spirit or whatever, was always infused or revealed or expressed within the living world. So primary reality must be honored as primary. And this would be fine if we just referred to Gaia, but if you've got a concept of God that's outside Gaia, then you got a problem. So I spell God now always G, Earth emoji, D. And what I'm meaning is reality with a personality, not a person outside of reality. And whenever I speak in colleges, I can usually count on some philosophy major to say, well, what do you mean by reality? And I love Philip K. Dick's definition. He says, reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. And that includes time and nature, as I said before. Sustainable means living faithful to time and nature. Unsustainable means unfaithful to time and nature. Teddy Goldsmith was a scholar that spent a lifetime studying the differences between genuinely sustainable and unsustainable cultures. His book, The Stable Society, is all about that, as well as his magnum opus, The Way. He was the editor and the publisher of The Ecologist magazine for almost 40 years. And he identified religion. He actually defined religion as the control mechanism of sustainable cultures. What he means by mechanism is just that aspect of society that relates to the rest of society with moral authority to ensure that the future is not compromised by the present. Because in traditional, stable, sustainable, pro-future societies, everything, technology is in accord with the needs of the biosphere, the settlements, the economy, education, basically everything must be done in ways that don't destroy what you're dependent upon, the needs of the biosphere. And of course, that makes sense when you realize the nested nature of reality. We can't be in the middle and exploiting the rest of the body and not have it cause us serious problems. Religion, however, in unsustainable cultures becomes downgraded to merely the coping mechanism of unsustainable cultures. So it turns out that religion needs science and evidence needs a moral voice. And this can't happen. This won't happen when the biosphere is exploited as it rather than honored as thou. So again, religion is the control mechanism, that aspect of culture that speaks with moral authority in sustainable cultures. Here are three things that Teddy Goldsmith identified over 500 years of anthropological research in terms of the difference between genuinely sustainable cultures and unsustainable civilizations. In genuinely sustainable, pro-future indigenous cultures, all benefits and all real wealth come from the living biosphere. What I mean by God with the earth emoji. That God or reality will continue to dispense these benefits and wealth only if life's critical order, that is, its essential integrity or way, is honored and preserved. Therefore, the fundamental role of religion or life ways is to ensure that the culture or society remains faithful to time and nature. How? By fiercely preserving the integrity of the ecosphere and the critical order of the cosmos. And I'll conclude with these four things: God first or life first, seventh generation, sacred limits, and consequence capture. So I refer to these as the four laws of true sustainability. God first or life first simply means an ecocentric, a life-centered, not human-centered or anthropocentric measures of progress and success. When we measure progress and success in terms of individual wealth or corporate wealth or GDP or whatever, we're on an ecocidal path. We have to measure well-being in terms of how well is the soil doing decade by decade? How well are the forests doing decade by decade? How are the other species doing decade by decade? That's the only genuinely sustainable measure of well-being and wealth. Seventh generation. Failing to prioritize the future over the present is evil. All indigenous cultures know this. Sacred limits, material grace limits are real and must be honored. It's the failing to honor the limits of the living world that has been our major downfall. It's thinking that things were limitless. And then finally, consequence capture. The impacts, for good or ill, must be mirrored back. Any individual, corporation, or nation state that disregards or harms the common good should be taxed or penalized, or there's moral strictures. And individuals, corporations, and nations that do well to the larger common good should benefit. And the more good they do, the more they should benefit. So they're incentivized to do as much good as possible. These four things, life first or God first, seventh generation, sacred limits, and consequence capture. These are the essence of true sustainability. I love this quote from my great mentor, Joanna Macy, from A Wild Love for the World. This is a dark time filled with suffering and uncertainty. Like living cells in a larger body, it is natural that we feel the trauma of our world. So don't be afraid of the anguish you feel, or the anger or fear, because these responses arise from the depth of your caring and the truth of your interconnectedness with all beings. So let me stop the slides and just speak a few things from my heart here. So how can we who are not indigenous people, I mean, we all are indigenous if we go back far enough, but how can we Westerners cultivate a repentant, pro-future heart and mind? Well, I suggest one way is to honor existing indigenous peoples and their struggles, because these are folks scattered around the world who still have this I-thou relationship to primary reality. They still come from this place of profound relatedness and interconnectedness, and anything and everything we can do to learn from them and to apply what Robin Wall Kimmerer calls the 4 R's of right relationship to reality: reciprocity, respect, responsibility, and reverence. Again, the 4 R's of right relationship to reality: reciprocity, respect, responsibility, and reverence. We can all cultivate those. And when I speak of a repentant heart and mind, what I'm meaning is it's called in Greek metanoia. There's a conversion that's possible when we recognize that we've been treating the living world merely as merely as resources and a place for our waste. We can repent of that. We can say, no, we were wrong. And then with genuine metanoia, with genuine repentance, comes not just a shift in mind and heart, but a shift in attitudes and actions. Our way of being in the world differs, because just because we can't save the world in terms of our personal choices and habits, we can look ourselves in the mirror and feel good about ourselves. We can feel good about our contribution to our families, our neighbors, our relatives, our fellow congregants. So true sustainability is nurturing this profound interrelatedness and interconnectedness. It's honoring life first, or God first with the earth emoji, so it includes the biosphere, sacred limits, seventh generation, and consequence capture. And then as we do this, we can also we can know that we are at an amazing time in Earth's history. One of the things that you'll be invited to do between now and about a week and a half from now is to watch a little short video that I've created, 25 minutes, called Serenity Prayer for the 21st Century. Because there's lots of things that we can accept that are unchangeable, that if we don't accept them, we're going to go crazy or drive ourselves and our families crazy. But when we accept them, then we can have joy and peace even in contracting times, because make no mistake, we are living in contracting times. We're living in a time when every season, every year, things are going to unwind and not get better and better. And that's difficult for those of us, you know, with white hair, those of us that grew up in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It's very difficult to accept that we're no longer in times of expansion, we're in times of contraction. And that technology in the market cannot save us from what technology in the market have caused in the first place. And that's sobering inspiration. That's sobering to accept that. And yet when we accept that, we can find joy that goes beyond. It's what I call post-doom. I'll say a lot more about that in the Q&A, but post-doom is that sacred space of accepting what we cannot change, and then the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference as we support each other and live lives of deep and meaningful contribution. But we have to do the grief work. We have to do the heart work. And that's where we need each other. And Unitarian Universalist churches are especially well placed to be a blessing to your community, because you're not going to get in the media, you're not going to get in terms of most of the ways that people get information, denial is going to be there. And so if we do that heart work, then we can be a blessing to our communities when they start freaking out, when they start going into despair, because we are in the early stages. I suggest that we're in the early stages of the greatest mental health crisis and the greatest addiction crisis in human history. Plato noted 2,500 years ago that when societies contract, addictions of all kinds ramp up. And that's what we're seeing. And you combine that with climate change, abrupt climate change, like 10,000 years of climate change in half a human lifetime. And we're looking at a time when we can all be the saints, sages, heroes, and sheroes that always appear in times of contraction, but we get to do that in local ways in our little communities, such as Cleveland. And for me, Ypsilanti, Michigan. So, thank you.
And now for our hymn number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. Please join David.
So
Now bring your chalice close to extinguish it as I extinguish the chalice here. We extinguish our flames, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we meet again.
May we leave this place, yes, also this virtual space, embodying the very best of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the very best of the liberal progressive tradition, celebrating our differences and being a blessing to all those with whom we come into contact in a way that's also a blessing to the future. Amen, aho, and blessed be.
Remember, there will be no coffee hour or sermon chat this morning. See you next week, West Shore. Until then, love and courage and cheer to all.